All right, so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about reconciliation and what that means. To start off with, to reconcile means to make friends with again. So it says here, settle a quarrel. This is a really old formal English way of saying to end a fight. So we've had like a fight or a conflict now. All of these bad things have happened. So how can we become friends again? How can we now have friendly relationships after having a disagreement or a fight? Now, we can look on the website of Reconciliation Australia, and Reconciliation Australia has a lot of different information, some of which I am reading from right now. So, Reconciliation Australia, their job is to try and fix this problem that we have, to try and make our Aboriginal Australian people and our non Aboriginal Australian people one peaceful, unified people, to come together and be able to be together as Australians. Now, they say there are about 5 important things that we need to do to reconcile or to be able to become, friendly and respectful and fix this problem. Now, the 5 are race relations. So, the first one here, race relations. All Australians understand and value Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and non Indigenous cultures, rights, and experiences, which results in stronger relationships based on trust and respect and that are free of racism. This means don't be racist and be respectful. Pretty simple. The next one is equality and equity. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples participate equally in a range of life opportunities, and the unique rights of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are recognised and upheld. So, this is a little bit of a tricky one. I found out something tonight that I didn't know. To start off with, we talked a little bit about the Australian Constitution. This is the main law of Australia. But Section 25, if you can see here, provision as to races disqualified from voting. This means that people of a certain racial background, for example, Aboriginal people, can actually legally be stopped from voting. I didn't know that. So this is still there. If the government ever decided that they wanted to say Aboriginal people can't vote to choose government, they could. That really surprised me. So this is still something that's in our law today. That's pretty bad. Worse still, we have to talk a lot about closing the gap. And closing the gap is talking about the difference between Aboriginal life and non-Aboriginal life. So we don't have equality. So there are the 4 things that you can see here. Shorter life expectancy. This means that Aboriginal people don't live as long, so they will die earlier than non-Aboriginal people. Higher rates of infant mortality, so children and babies dying. Aboriginal children and babies are more likely to die than non-Aboriginal children and babies. They have poorer health, lower levels of education and employment, just for being Aboriginal, and that's not fair. When we look here, we can see how much difference there is in the life expectancy, or how long we think we will live. So, non-Indigenous girls will live a decade longer, 10 years longer. So, an Aboriginal woman is expected to live until the age of 73, but a non-Aboriginal woman is expected to live until 84. And again, we've got the gap for men. So Aboriginal men are expected to live until the age of 69, but non-Aboriginal men are expected to live until the age of 79. That's huge. And of course, that's not fair. Now, the third one is institutional integrity. So this is talking about politics, business, and community structures. And what they're saying here in this report is a few things. So they're talking about the amount of Aboriginal people working. So we need to have more people employing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And that's really important because sometimes people are not employed because of racism, just because they're Aboriginal. But they're also saying that the government has performed poorly. It's not done well when they're talking about using Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander businesses. So we not only want to hire more Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but we also want to promote Aboriginal business so that they can be more successful. Then we have unity. An Australian society that values and recognises Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and heritage as a proud part of a shared national identity. So we know that Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people are part of Australia and we are proud of them. And the last part is historical acceptance. So we've got all Australians understand and accept the wrongs of the past and the impact of these wrongs. So we know that it was wrong and we understand how much it hurt in the past and still today. Australia makes amends for the wrongs of the past and ensures these wrongs are never repeated. Now, this is pretty important. So, remember, we talked a little bit about death in custody, which was people who die in the care of the police. Well, I looked up some statistics, and here's the key part. So, in the last 10 years, 147 Indigenous people died, and since 1991, 407 Aboriginal people have died in custody, have died in the in the care of the police. So this is a real problem. Unfortunately, one of the interesting parts here is also, here we go. It says agencies such as police, watch houses, prisons and hospitals failed to follow their own procedures in 34% of cases where Indigenous people died. Now, that means they didn't listen to their own rules. Okay, prisons, hospitals, and the police, they are told you should do this. They have their rules, they didn't listen to them. And here's the other interesting part 34% Indigenous people, but only 21% of non Indigenous people. So that number is not equal, and that's a problem. So, in a particular part here, looking at historical acceptance, they're saying there is widespread acceptance. We all know and agree that the wrongs of the past will never be repeated. So there is truth, justice or fairness, healing, and historical acceptance. They're saying all of these things work together. We need to do all of them, and we do them all together, and they all help to improve things. So that's our plan or our blueprint, our plan to make sure that we can reconcile Australia and come back together and have peace and have fairness. Thank you for listening. And don't forget, if you've got any questions, you can ask me.